Now, when it comes to things that the Horde has done bad, there's a couple of expansions whose sole focus is on that, so this video will go over Alliance bad things. Things that members of the Alliance have done which could be considered morally questionable. So first, let's start off with the Purge of Dalaran. In Mists of Pandaria, Dalain Proudmoore found out that some of the Blood Elves in Dalaran allowed Garithos and his men to move the Divine Bell through the city, after they had just stolen it from the Night Elves. When confronting the Blood Elves who were in charge of the other Blood Elves in Dalaran at the time, she got a response that they didn't actually do anything, and since the Blood Elves just looked the other way, Jaina took this as a huge offense, and then immediately killed his guards and imprisoned him. Then she ordered the immediate exile of all of the Blood Elves from the city. The Silver Covenant helped Jaina in getting rid of all the Blood Elves from the city as well, where they basically arrest anyone who didn't resist and then killed the people who did. Now, as players, you actually get to help Jaina accomplish this task, or help Blood Elves escape the city if you're Horde. Jaina runs around the city teleporting people to the dungeons, and then will kill anyone who fights back, which happens occasionally, as they are citizens being forced to leave their homes. The Silver Covenant, led by Varisa Windrunner, will task Alliance players to kill various Blood Elves throughout the city. One of them, a scribe shopkeep, who is being executed for not siding with the Covenant. Another is a merchant in the Dalaran Bank, who is trying to recover his assets from that bank. Another is a blacksmith, an engineer, a tailor shopkeeper, all of them ordered to be executed because they didn't want to leave their shops. Now, I know what you might be saying, the Blood Elves did help Garithos, so it was only natural for Jaina to kick them out. And she did spare anyone who gave up, and only killed a handful of people intentionally, and then killed all the others because they tried to fight back. But here's the thing, Dalaran also participated in protecting Theramore when Garithos was attacking the city, and they even sent in troops, including some Blood Elves. No one cared that they literally used Dalaran to provide military aid in the form of troops being sent into Theramore directly to aid the Alliance's cause. However, the only thing the Horde did was let a small group of people move through the city. It wasn't even all the Blood Elves, most of them didn't even know what was going on. It was an incredibly small group of Garithos loyalists who threatened the Blood Elves if they didn't let them move through the city. And Jaina decided to purge all of the Blood Elves on her own without consulting anyone, as Varian got incredibly mad when he found out what she did, because he was in talks with the Blood Elves to have them join the Alliance, because they were not happy with Garithos either. Apparently, Jaina hasn't heard of this little thing called a trial, or looking for evidence. The entire debacle was just her being fed up with the Horde for lots of justifiable reasons, I'll give her credit for that, but the entire situation was not a good thing. And the Blood Elves are still kind of bitter about this whole ordeal, and is why a lot of the Blood Elves eagerly sided with Sylvanas during the Fourth War. Now, let's go over Camp Taurajo. The Camp Taurajo incident is a mess all around, and is a very good storyline when you play through it in the Southern Barrens, because playing through that zone gives you two different stories depending on which faction you play on, and you have to actually play through both quest lines in order to get the full story. So what happened was the Alliance decided to attack Camp Taurajo because it would give them a foothold in the Barrens and be an excellent military outpost if they were to ever launch an invasion on the Horde. And it was considered a military target since they did train hunters and warriors there. So the Alliance sent in an attack and killed all of the defenders. Then they opened up a path so that all of the civilians could run out. However, unbeknownst to the Alliance, the path they let the civilians run to was directly into Quilboar territory, so all of the civilians were massacred. So if you're playing on the Horde side, you learn that the Alliance attacked the town for no reason, and then intentionally led them into Quilboar territory as a cruel joke, so that they could die a slow death. And on the Alliance side, they tell you how they took the town while trying to minimize as many casualties as possible, and even opened a wall for their civilians to escape. And this little debacle is heavily debated in both the lore community and in the actual World of Warcraft world itself, as a direct result of this led them building the wall to close off Mulgore, and then taking Northwatch to get rid of the Alliance incursions into the Barrens. In one of the Warcraft books, Bane mentions the Camp Taurajo incident, and says, "The Tauren had not been untouched by the recent changes. The Alliance, expanding from Northwatch Hold under false information that the Tauren were planning an attack, had razed Camp Taurajo. The only residents it now had were looters. Many Tauren died in the battle, others fled to Vendetta Point. where they sporadically attack Northwatch Hold Scouts, or to Camp Unafe, the Camp of Refuge. Bane does admit that it was a military target though, and says as much when he's talking to Vol'jin in the same book. Vol'jin peered up at him from his raptor. "They destroyed Camp Taurajo, Mon," he said. "Yes," said Bane. "They took down a military target, and their general refused to slaughter civilians. He could have given the order to massacre everyone, but he didn't." Bane makes it a point to exile anyone who attacks Alliance from Vendetta Point, so the whole situation is definitely murky. The Alliance did a bad in attacking a peaceful Tauren settlement, but also it was a legitimate military target as said so by Bane himself. At the end of the whole incident, the Alliance general who ordered the attack was assassinated, and the Horde takes the place back. And there was even plans for there to be a war front in the Barrens that might have continued the story, though that was scrapped in BFA. Now let's talk about Stormheim. At the beginning of the Stormheim zone in Legion, the Alliance, led by Greymane, attacked the Forsaken ships without provocation. The Alliance had no information that the Horde was up to anything. They just straight up saw some Forsaken ships, were pretty miffed about what happened at the Broken Shore, and decided to just open fire. Now here's the thing, Greymane got lucky, and it turns out Sylvanas was up to some shady stuff, so nothing really came of it. Kind of, as this plot point is expanded upon in the prequel novel A Good War, as Sylvanas uses this little incident as one of the main motivators to convince Saurfang to plan the War of Thorns for her. You see, the Alliance attacked them when they were not at war, and in fact had a tenuous peace treaty going on to work together in order to defeat the Legion. And for the rest of the expansion, they did work together in order to defeat the Legion, something that Saurfang brings up when he's talking to Sylvanas. However, Sylvanas mentions the fact that Greymane was never reprimanded for what he had done. Not only did he face no consequences for attacking them, he's the main advisor to the current leader of the Alliance, and is always seen around Anduin, which is basically the same as the Alliance endorsing his actions. And if the Alliance endorses an unprovoked action during peacetime, then who knows when they're going to attack next, especially with Greymane whispering into the king's ears. So this little incident is indirectly the cause of the Fourth War, and probably had the biggest ramifications of everything the Alliance had done so far. Now, let's talk about the battle for Dazar'alor. The Alliance sneaks spies into the harbor of the city of the Zandalari, and then blow up all of their boats after leading a majority of their forces to a different battlefront, siege the city and then kill their current residing king, then run away and face no consequences for this action. Now, at the time of this battle, the Zandalari were not officially part of the Horde yet. They were just in talks with giving them ships, and it was the Alliance attacking the city and killing the king that got the Zandalari to finally join the Horde. Although, in the Alliance's defense, if the Horde managed to get the Zandalari on their side with their full navy intact, they would have been totally screwed. And they were basically ready to join the Horde at any moment anyway, so they did a preemptive strike for their best interests. And it also led to one of the best raids in the game. Now, let's go over who attacked first at Silithus. After the discovery of Azerite, Sylvanas and Galliwick sent a team of goblins to Silithus in order to start a mining operation to obtain as much Azerite as possible. The Alliance learned of this operation through their SI-7 spies, and warns Anduin about it. Then Matthias Shaw sends a group of spies to Silithus in order to watch the mining operations. In the book Before the Storm, a group of Explorer League members being escorted by Alliance Night Elves are attacked by goblins in Silithus, and this is incorrectly described as the Horde attacking first in this incident, since the Alliance get a quest in order to kill goblin miners, which happens immediately after the speech Anduin gives during the cinematic. As when Matthias Shaw gives you the quest, he talks about the speech that Anduin had given that day, keyword being that day. And the Explorers League members don't arrive at Silithus until a few weeks later after that speech, as Anduin meanders about after that speech in the book, goes to different Alliance cities in order to talk to Alliance leaders, and it's during his travels to Ironforge that he talks to the Explorer League members, who themselves talk about how they're going to Silithus, and are the exact same members who get attacked, which happens weeks after he gives the speech. So that would have taken at least another week, or even a couple of days after he reached Ironforge, for the Explorer League members to go to Silithus. And even then, they weren't attacked immediately. The time frame puts the Explorer League members getting attacked almost a month, after the Alliance spies were already attacking Goblin miners. And this part is kind of glossed over a little bit, since the Goblins didn't care very much. They probably just saw getting killed by Alliance spies as a workplace hazard, something they were probably used to, and no one really batted an eye when the Horde amassed an army in what they thought was a march on Silithus, since there was already skirmishes going on down there. But instead, Saurfang marched the army north through Ashenvale, which started the Fourth War. Speaking of goblins, when their home island was getting destroyed during the Cataclysm, a lot of them were held captive by Galliwix on a boat as they were trying to escape, and the Alliance came across them at the same time they shot down Thrall's boat, and then opened fire on the Goblins' boat in order to eliminate witnesses. This again was just another attack without provocation, which eventually led the Goblins to joining the Horde after they meet Thrall on the island and become friends with him. Now let's talk about the former Stonespear Tauren tribe. Former because their tribe got wiped out. The tribe inhabited the southern part of the Barrens before the Cataclysm, and they were driven from their homes by the Quillboard to near extinction, although they weren't gone yet and made their home at Baal Modan, which was their ancestral burial site as well. A group of dwarves found the place and discovered that there was Titan artifacts there, and decided to set up a mining operation in order to investigate further. The Tauren didn't let them though, and reached out to the dwarves in order to come to a diplomatic resolution, but the dwarves were having none of that. So they routed them out and chased them off, killing anyone who fought back, which essentially ended what remained of the Stonespears, as one of the last survivors has a quest which sends Horde adventurers into the dig site in order to take revenge and kill the dwarves. And these dwarves are not an independent operation. They were part of the Alliance at the time of this ordeal, even if they weren't sent on direct orders by the Alliance. And speaking of dwarves, and also humans, after the Third War, Sylvanas took back Undercity and sent out emissaries to all of the Alliance kingdoms in order to maybe rejoin, as all of her people were former members of the Alliance. And without exception, all of her emissaries were either killed or hunted if they managed to get away, especially the emissaries sent to the humans or dwarven settlements. They saw the undeads as monsters who were part of the Scourge, and made absolutely no attempts to hear them out. And in fact, they sanctioned attacks on the Forsaken as well as all undeads through the Silver Hand, which eventually became the Scarlet Crusade, who still had somewhat friendly relations with the Alliance in vanilla WoW, before the Alliance officially denounced them sometime later. The Scarlet Crusade are crazy people who kill anything they think might be undead, and it took a really long time for the Alliance to distance themselves from them, even though they still don't like the undead to the modern day. In Before the Storm, when Anduin tried to show one of the most peaceful undead in the entire world, Alonsis Fowl, to Greymane and Turalyon, they both immediately tried to kill him. One can wonder what might have been if they had actually talked to the emissaries rather than killing them, as this was a main motivation for Sylvanas joining the Horde in the first place, and her resentment towards the Alliance. Now, that covers all of the main events of Alliance aggression. And I didn't include a lot of iffy things since they don't really pertain to the modern Alliance. Garithos was an Alliance general who hated the Blood Elves because he was racist, and sent them on suicide missions and then eventually ordered them all to be executed after they accepted the help from Naga. Garithos was a main motivation for the Blood Elves not wanting to join the Alliance at first, but it wasn't the only reason, and Sylvanas did eventually kill him anyway. We also have Daelin Proudmoore attacking the Horde without provocation, as he was technically part of the Alliance at the time, but this was before World of Warcraft, and Jaina denounced his actions as well. The Alliance set up orc internment camps after they won the Second War, which were not good places for the orcs. However, the alternative was to have them all executed, so there's that. The Alliance also produced Arthas, who is probably responsible for more deaths than any of the main characters from World of Warcraft, beating out even someone like Sylvanas. Maybe. I'm actually not sure which of the two have more people killed, but I'm gonna have to go with Arthas because he was kind of a machine when it came to killing people. Although his actions were not sanctioned by the Alliance and happened before World of Warcraft, and he was firmly a villain during all of the World of Warcraft timeline. The Night Elves kicked out the High Elves for wanting to use magic after the War of the Ancients, which led to a lot of resentment by the Blood Elves who went through lots of hardships trying to find and build a new nation. And they also wouldn't allow orcs to chop down trees and attack them. But again, this happened before World of Warcraft, and they weren't part of the Alliance, nor would people really blame them for either of these actions to an extent. And then we have alternate Draenor Yrel, killing anyone who doesn't convert to the light, which does happen during World of Warcraft, but independent of the Alliance, so she's kind of doing her own thing, and only temporarily joined up with the Alliance when they were there, and then started doing her own thing after they had left. So, excluding all of those things, we have a pretty good list of everything else from the video which shows Alliance attacks without provocation, excluding a handful of minor things. But I will admit, a Horde video done in this style would be much longer. This video isn't about trying to say that the Alliance is worse than the Horde, it's merely listing all of the Alliance offenses, for educational purposes. Alright, and that's the end of the video. This video was edited by the lovely Flying Buttress, and it wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for him. So, if you liked it, I'd highly suggest you checking out his channel, as he makes World of Warcraft videos as well, and is criminally underwatched for how good they are. Links to his channel will be at the end of the video and in the video description. And fun fact, did you know only 26.2% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed to the channel?